And these are the minimum standards. And this is important because the question is whether, particularly the second part, the right to determine the internal constitution without outside interference. Do the autonomous countries meet this criteria today? That's the question that is being asked. Okay. Integration on the basis of complete equality with equal status and rights of citizenship and equal representation and effective participation in the political system. Now, do the integrated jurisdictions meet this criteria today? Does Bonaire or Statia or Saba have full equality? This is the reason why it's referred to as partial equality, partial integration. And one of the resolutions that comes later deals with, this is a 1970 resolution, and it dealt with looking at different models as a possibility. But it was sometimes used to say, well, anything that the people have agreed to was fine, except that was not the intention of it. The intent was not intended to legitimize political dependency, which was not fully self-governing. Okay. So resolutions between 1970 and the present continue to reaffirm the standards of Resolution 1541. That's the definition of independence, free association, or integration. And there's some of the resolutions that they've addressed natural resources, cultural heritage. They deal with the presence of foreign military bases, participation in international organizations, and the promotion of self-governance, as well as developing education programs for the people to develop an awareness of their options, which is often the prerequisite to a referendum. Now, what has happened over time, particularly at the beginning of by the end of the Cold War, the beginning of the 1990s, there began an attempt to legitimize the inequality. So the idea was that you find that there are internal constitutions, but yet the constitutions are not really written by the people. They're handed to the territories. In the case of the British and the U.S., the British territories have constitutional orders. They're written by the British government and given to the territory as an order. In recent years, in recent decades or two, there have been some consultation on, but there's always been, it's difficult to negotiate with someone who has total control over you. That's not a negotiation. The negotiation should be on the basis of equality. So the constitutional orders are the best that can be gained from the kind of relationship of a discussion where the one party is totally under the direct unilateral power of the other party. And the partial integration is the model that we know in the case of the Netherlands, in which case it is not equality, but it's an example of inequality, as James had mentioned. Okay. So that we have now, how do we examine all of these issues? And all of these different models are examined through what is known as self-governance indicators. And these indicators there are a set of indicators for autonomous countries that look at the extent of mutual consent. It looks at how the laws of the one country are applied to the other, how the issue of ownership of natural resources. In some cases, for example, countries may be autonomous, but their natural resources are owned by the larger associate. Does the country have the ability to modify its own constitution? What is the economic relationship? And whether or not military activities are underway. In Curacao, for example, there are military activities of the United States by agreement between the Netherlands and the United States, but the Curacao government is not involved in that. So it's another fact. Okay. For integration, it has to be on the basis of political equality. So what is the degree of political equality? Is there equal participation? Representation, what is the degree of the economic monetary integration? The best, for example, best islands have the US dollar. How does that figure into its ability to involve itself economically in regional affairs? And is there a recognized right to self-determination? Okay. So in conclusion, Self-determination has not ended, as we can see, but it has taken on increasingly complex dimensions. Many of the present dependency arrangements do not meet the international standards of full self-governance, whether they be territories, whether they be autonomous countries, or integrated, they're partially integrated. Now, self-governance assessments have proven instrumental in establishing a democratic deficit in these dependency arrangements. A self-governance assessment provided a substantive basis for the UN reinscription of the most recent territory, French Polynesia, as I mentioned. And this would provide substantive basis for the UN to act. There was a self-governance assessment done in 2012 for Curaçao, and it provided some very interesting background and analysis of the current political arrangement. Okay. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Is it about Carlisle Corbin?